Hey guys, welcome back. GVG came out, just took a look at StrifeCro's Mage deck, and one thing that's kind of been interesting, as StrifeCro pointed out in the break, is with the release of GVG, the quality of creatures has kind of gone up. You're starting to see a lot fewer spells in decks played in general, and just give me some of your thoughts about that. I've noticed like a drop-off in Lotheb, for example, just because there's so many more minion-heavy decks. So, StrifeCro, how do you feel about like that kind of direction?
Yeah, well, I mean, I like the direction of that a lot because, um, I kind of like really intense creature battling and stuff like that. It's like basically like my favorite part about Hearthstone. That's why I don't really like playing decks like Freeze Mage and Miracle Rogue. I've always preferred decks like tempo decks or mid range decks, even like Zoo and Hunter more so than like something like a Freeze Mage. But my favorite decks are like the mid range ones like Druid and Shaman and stuff. But yeah, I mean, back to like more on the topic, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Like so many of the decks now, you don't have to put in all the spells that like you think belong in the class. I played Paladin without equality. Like the Paladin I ran didn't even run equality. I think that might be wrong, but I had consecrate. Like going back, and I'd probably put in equality, but not consecrate like the other way around. But like mage without fireball, you kind of like shamans without lightning storms or lightning bolts or whatever. Like there's just like basically like I think if you're making a deck now, like really, I guess like look at what your deck's trying to do and don't like feel pressure to just like put in every single spell that for that class. Like all
Mm-hmm.
the good spells. Like I've seen some people run really cool druid lists, even like some kind of like hobgoblin aggro druid like with bear like druid talon,
Yeah.
and it didn't even use wrath, and that's I think it was a really good improvement not to use wrath for that kind of druid. So
It's cool. How do you feel about it, Hype? Do you like the creature direction that things are taking?
I would like to see a few new cool spells added because it feels like they're always adding creatures and not adding as many cool
Yeah.
spells, it seems. And like people have noted that it's kind of like it starts to get a little bit like Arena where you only get like three spells in your deck, and it gets a little boring, but it is fun. Like StrifeCro mentioned, where you can kind of count on creature battles and you can kind of get rewarded for making the perfect trades and not just get swept by some AoE spell or something.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I believe you did predict this though, that spells would get worse in GVG, and you said that Soulfire would be insane, and you said that before the Soulfire nerf. I
Yeah,
think that
yeah.
had something to do with it.
Yeah, Soulfire is much less good now, that's for sure. I've actually, speaking of Soulfire, I want to talk about the deck that I brought for this. Let's save hypes for last. I've been playing a deck that's kind of inspired by this Warlock deck that Clento played some time long ago. It's pretty different now because there have been a couple of expansions since then, but I've been playing this deck, which I call Oddlock, and it's kind of weird. Basically, the plan, like a lot of my non-interactive decks that I've been trying to build, is to draw cards, kill stuff, and then win the game in the late game somehow. This deck basically does it with, Arcane Golem and Power Overwhelming Faceless combo. But yeah, this is a deck that actually does play Soulfire. Personally, I've cut Soulfire from Zoo, I've cut it from Handlock. This is the only deck I still like it in. And I just kind of want to get some of your guys' thoughts on this. I was having a lot of fun playing this. There's a lot of like weird strategies that you can just try out while the metagame's in flux. And yeah, I don't know. What are your impressions on it? Start with hyped.
Oh yeah, I actually played this deck that you linked the other day.
Mm-hmm.
Before I noticed that I believe it didn't have owls, and I was like, I could really use the silence
Yeah.
because you had the mini mages in there, which is a super fun card.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people have been messing around with. Tide linked me a deck that had it in Rogue. It's super fun. You just plop it on the board, and then you have all this damage next turn. You AoE him down.
Mm-hmm.
And then with this deck, there's just so many sources of 4 damage. There's the 2 Soulfires, the 2 Power Overwhelmings, and then if you have the mini mage on the board, the Dark Bomb does 4 damage as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the Arcane Golem, and yeah, just like multiples of 4 damage out of nowhere for like no mana because you already paid the mana on the mini mage. And then yeah, I was running into some problems with taunt, so the owl is really nice. And then I noticed everyone was playing around Molten Giants, so they just leave me at 15, give me all the time to put together all the Power Overwhelm, Soulfires, Dark Bombs. But it's just so fun to just nuke them for all these 1 mana spells for all their health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, how do you feel about StrifeCro? Do you think a deck like this has some potential in the metagame still, or is it just completely worse than Handlock?
well, I think it's cool because like Warlock has so many more spells now for removal. Like Dark Bomb. I mean, a lot of people are replacing Soulfire with Dark Bomb, but like the addition of Dark Bomb kind of allows you to run both, like you're doing in this deck, and because you could never really play a Warlock like this before, because you simply don't have enough spells to remove creatures. So it's kind of cool that it opens up like a archetype like this, where you have like such a high spell density that you can try to kill everything and try to one shot people with the combo or whatever. I do think it does rely a lot on them not realizing what you're doing, because because people are thinking you're handlocked most of the time. I think when you're playing like this, and they're playing around things like Molten Giant, which you don't have. So if they'll actually just try to kill you and realize what you're actually just running the exact list like this, I think they will mostly be able to kill you, since like a lot of the creatures are sticky now, like Death Rattles and stuff. So it's still hard to remove everything even with like Soulfire and Dark Bomb, and and you don't really have the Shadow Flames and stuff. So
yeah, Death Rattles
is good. So yeah.
Those are a big problem for sure. I've had Moltens in here before too, trying to win with that. Just kept messing with stuff. But it's just cool that I personally, because of the increased creature quality, I think Giants just aren't as good as they used to be. Like, it used to be that you could afford to just life tap twice as handlock, and you play your turn 4 8/8, and whatever your opponent did in the turns before that they can't trade into it, but they have to because they'll get raced by it. Now I found that with mechs and just bigger early game minions, a lot of times playing a giant is not that big of a deal. Your opponent can just trade like a spider tank into it plus a spell or something, and it's not that tough to deal with them anymore. But yeah, that's kind of where I see a strategy like this panning out. But Warlock is in a really weird spot. We've seen lots of people trying to make small changes to Zoo. We've seen Handlock doing really well in the early weeks. But yeah, I'm still not entirely sure what the best list of Warlock is at this point. Is that a deck that you guys ended up bringing to the Kingwin event?
I brought Handlock.
Okay.
And I actually had the same intuition as you at the beginning in GG, and I'm not sure if it's right, so I think it might be right. Like, basically, I thought that Handlock used to do the strongest thing, like tap tap. I mean, unless you just get killed or by aggro, like it was really hard for any other like mid range or control deck to do anything stronger than dropping 8/8s on turn 4 and turn 5 or whatever. And now I thought with increased creature quality, I thought Handlock would be terrible now, because you can just do things as strong as Handlock without being Handlock and just tapping. But I don't know. I don't know. The more I played it, a lot of the decks that I did end up playing had a lot of trouble with Handlock, so it kind of changed my mind about it. It's still like strong to tap tap and drop 8/8, and it's also like just it's not even just the turn 4 and 5 like 8/8s or whatever. It's really the Molten Giant threats. A lot of the decks I'm playing have a hard time playing around the Molten Giants. Is really the big issue, I think. So
yeah, it makes a lot of sense. When you play so many minions, it's hard to find room for burst and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
You brought Warlock as well, right?
Yeah, I went with Zoo. I got some really weak draws when I did play it. I drew all the 5 drops, but yeah, I really liked the Fell Reaver in Zoo. I think it has a lot of it's high upside. Like in Hunter, I noticed that the Tiger and the Loatheb are fine. You just want the 5 damage. But in Zoo, I noticed that the 8/8 body is really, really helpful. Except the extra damage. Then you follow up with Loatheb or Doomguard, and they've already burned their executes at this point, so it's super strong.
Yeah, definitely.
But Handlock is great on ladder. A lot of people have been having success, myself included. It's really good, but sometimes I notice it's really easy for the enemy to just like make Hellfire useless with like the Tinkertown, the Spider Tank, and even like an Enhance Mechano here and there, just Divine Shield. You just can't Hellfire their guys down.
Definitely. Whoops. Let's talk about Hype's deck real quick, and then we will get into some of the specific cards that have kind of been overperforming. So Hyped, you have a rogue deck for us that you've been playing. No gadgets in, double Tinker's Sharp Sword Oil. Tell us about this deck.
Yeah, this is Purple Drank. If people are familiar, it's his latest creation. He's always a fan of the Arcane Golem, Cold Light type of rogue. And yeah, when I first saw Tinker's Oil, a lot of people made the same conclusion. They're like, why is it so expensive? Why does it cost 4? It doesn't do that much. And it's still not that efficient of damage, because it's hard to get it on the Assassin's Blade or even on just a 2-charge weapon. But the strength of it is that it's just like it adds more to your total damage, and you just have so much total damage now that when you already have like all these efficient damage spells like Sinister Strike, Cold Blood, South Sea, Shadow Step, and then you just add Tinker's Oil on top of all that, you just have way too much damage. Like I get games against Warriors, they Harrison my Assassin's Blade on turn 5, and I still just have enough damage to push through all the armor after that over 2 turns. Just like huge Blade Flurries, and just so much extra damage.
It's sick to see preparation being played in a deck without gadgets in as well. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, the sprint really justifies it, and also just the Cold Light. You have so much cards, you need to prep some stuff out to actually use them.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to play all your stuff if you ever Shadow Step that guy. It makes a lot of sense. But this is cool. Kind of Rogue's been one of the decks that we haven't seen too much of after GVG. You know, the gadgets and nerf really hurt it. A lot of people just have been struggling to find a good list, and pretty much everyone's Rogue deck looks completely different right now. So it's cool to see this kind of variant. I'm definitely a big fan of Sharp Sword Oil plus Deckhand. I like that interaction a lot. But all right, so cool deck. StrifeCro, what do you think about this Rogue deck? What do you think is the best version of Rogue? Is that a class you messed around with at all?
I don't know. I haven't really touched Rev much, but I think it's cool. Like I thought Tinker Sharp Sword Oil was like a really price for what it did, but I think that's one of the reasons why you can use prep in a deck like this, because it's such a good prep target. It's so important to have the combo for Tinker Sharp Sword Oil, and prep is actually like kind of over budgeted. Like, you know, even if you compare it to Innervate, it's like 3 and so 2, and Innervate is already super strong, but the only problem with prep was like Rogue pretty much had nothing to prep above 3 mana anyways. You know, like you can prep Fan, which is good, but almost all your spells are just like 2 mana anyways, and you weren't really ever getting the full 3 mana value from prep, which is why like Sprint is kind of cool as well. So it's like a way to run prep without Gadgetzan, with Gadgetzan being a lot weaker. I don't know. I think Rogue could be really strong. I haven't tried any like say minion heavy Rogue decks. I don't know. I don't make decks like this very often. So if I did try something like Rogue, I'd try like some
Mid-range.
maybe like yeah, exactly. I don't know how it worked though. I haven't tried it.
Makes sense.